Subi, thank you for taking this time. It's been amazing being with you the last few days and hearing some of your thoughts. Will you quickly introduce yourself briefly, a bit of your background, where you are now, and some of your areas of focus, and then we'll ask a couple of deeper questions.
Let me start by saying I've been 30 years now at INSEAD in Fontainebleau in France, and I teach strategy there in the business school. INSEAD is a business school that is a global business school. And before that, I lived and studied in the US for about 15 years. And before that, I grew up in India. And the things I'm working on now are things I think that this conference and what you and I spoke about at dinner last night, which is, the evolution of the economic system. The economic system is so amazing, and it has brought us here. Now, of course, as the wealth and the development that we sought has kind of come within grasp all over the world, in the global north and the global south. And there's still a lot to do, but I think we're now ready to shift the goalpost and kind of go beyond just the quest for wealth and prosperity.
Great.
And this is what I kind of work. Of course, that transition requires that we may need to rethink not just the practices, but the paradigm. And how that paradigm evolves is a tricky question, because the old is not kind of completely in disrepair, but the new is not emerged and adopted. And we're now kind of in that bridge period, which may take a generation, maybe longer. But that's what I spend my time on.
Amazing. You mentioned a couple of things in here I'd like to pick up on. One is an evolution of the paradigm, evolution of capitalism. Capitalism, of course, is not static. It evolves to meet the needs of the current moment.
Exactly.
I'd love for you to explore that and then tie that into your idea of, okay, great, the objective of capitalism, the last version of iteration of capitalism, was to maximize wealth broadly, hopefully distribute some of it, but at least to maximize it, if not optimize for all. We're now starting to want to change that. I'd love for you to explore that a little bit further. And physicists are looking for a grand theory of everything.
Right.
Heaven help them. And you're looking for a grand theory of economics that would incorporate maybe off-balance sheet issues onto the balance sheet, or not, stakeholders that are disenfranchised, incorporate them, et cetera. Will you talk a little bit about that and this theory that you're trying to help evolve?
So there may be 2 or 3 things that I can share on that would be reflective of the kind of work that I'm doing with a community of scholars. And it's a community of about 20 to 25 people from around the world in different disciplines. And it's just been absolutely rewarding, enriching, and challenging all at the same time. And I've been engaged in this for about a dozen years now. And I cannot believe how nonlinear the learning and the education has been. There's a lot of history and catching up to do before we can improve something. We need to kind of understand how it works. Now, what are the 2 or 3 things that might give a contour to how we see the opportunity? The first point was, what is the purpose of the economy? How do we think about the economic system? And the answer was very simple, because it came out of this idea that we get welfare from what we consume. And therefore, if we can maximize our consumption, then our standard of living and our welfare utility would rise. Now, the only problem, therefore, then became production. And so that became the essential economic problem to solve. And it was called output. How do we maximize output per unit of input? And we call that productivity. And we say resources, whether it's material, labor, effort, these are to be economized. And how do we increase output, aka GDP? Today, we have $100 trillion world GDP, which is extraordinary. With 8 billion people, that's more than $12,000 average mean GDP. That is extraordinary compared to 100 years ago or 50 years ago or even 30 years ago. We're rich. We're rich, whether we like it, believe it or not, on average. And that's the great news. And it's a little bit of a tale of two cities, best of times and the worst of times. As this output has increased, we suddenly realize, hey, wait a minute, there's something else we care about, which we call outcomes. Whether it's on health, whether it's on environment, whether it's on trust, whether it's on mental health and anxiety, we have a paradox of abundance. How can we have such a rich world economy, which has delivered exactly what we wanted, the wealth of nations, and all nations are now more wealthy. And at the same time, where does this global anxiety and inequality and worries about climate and sustainability and ecosystems? So when we look at the outcomes that we care about, the score sheet is not so great. And so the first kind of transition is to say we need to better integrate output and outcomes. And this is a big shift. Now, the second thing that means wealth and well-being. And we know that wealth and well-being are correlated, but not in a linear fashion. And that these can be crowding out wealth. The pursuit of wealth can crowd out well-being. So the research that I do comes under this kind of rubric called integrating performance and progress. We've achieved tremendous performance, and as a strategy professor, that's the main dependent variable we try and study is performance. But suddenly, also as a strategy professor, we need to study, well, what about progress? Who's responsible for progress? In the past, 200 years ago, 100 years ago, we would think firms deliver performance, governments deliver progress. And we now realize there's a third P, that is peace. Governments have to focus on peace and security. And then we can't say, well, NGOs, maybe they give us its economic actors, consumers and producers and investors and employees and entrepreneurs and regulators. This is the set of actors who will co-produce performance and progress. And it cannot be 110 minus 10. It need not be 50-50. Maybe 80-20, 70-30, and depends on the phase in the industry and the country. And so now the second thing that comes out of this is, so we have a new idea called integration or integrating. We want to integrate. We want to better integrate market and society, humanity and nature, present and future, money and meaning, output and outcomes, performance and progress, income and impact, etc., etc. So integration becomes now the third chapter of business. The first chapter, innovation, remains the first chapter, innovation. So all the large language models, AI, etc., all of that is incredible and important for innovation, product, process, market innovation. The second chapter has been internationalization, what we call globalization. But globalization has led to outcomes that are unpalatable. And so today we're reversing globalization. We are suspending globalization, saying, hey, what about jobs? What about the environment? And so we need to better integrate. And so this is the third chapter. And that's what this whole community of scholars I work with. Now, progress, performance is a social science-driven thing, fundamentally economics, but also psychology, sociology, and political science, engineering and math. That's what business comes from. Progress, moral and political philosophy, and moral psychology. So in this community, we try to bring together philosophers and social scientists to understand integration. And the third thing that's coming out of this is that, at a macro level, we want output and outcomes. At a firm level, we want performance and progress. At an individual level, the leadership level that you were talking about, this means we need leaders who are, who have competence, but also character. Mm-hmm. And we need to integrate competence and character. Mm-hmm. We focus too much on competence, not enough on character. And by character, I mean caring, commitment, courage. We focus a lot on power, too little on courage. And how can we teach courage? We know that in the military, they teach a different kind of courage. It is teachable. Character is just another skill. It's just another part of human capital. But as educators, we need to now, in this new paradigm of education, of entrepreneurs, business leaders, consumers, what does it mean to be a thoughtful consumer? Because well-being cannot be purchased. You have to auto-produce it through your lifestyle, through your purchases, etc. So that's the research.
Amazing.
And there is no golden rule, and it's a tremendous amount of work at different levels: strategy and marketing and operation.
Amazing. I'm trying. I have a quote that I want to quote, but I can't remember who I should attribute it to. I'll say it anyway. Somebody said once, an effective society needs both plumbers and philosophers. Otherwise, neither your pipes nor your ideas will hold any water. We really do need to bring the skills and the competencies with the moral philosophy and the ethics and the character and the courage. And
that's exactly, I think that's exactly right.
Well, last quick comment or question. You told me last night at dinner that you've curtailed dramatically your golfing.
Yes. Because
you're spending so much time working on this. Why is this so important that you're making those types of, I mean, not that that's the biggest, it's a first world problem sacrifice, but you're making personal, and you told me some others, personal sacrifices to advance this work. Just quickly, 30 seconds, why is this so important?
I think at the end of the day, it's quite clear that the whole world is ready and is inclined now to change. Everybody, investors, producers, employees, consumers, regulators, everyone's ready. Now, in the past, we would have said, well, this is the economic system. And if the economic system has some dysfunctional side effects, unintended consequences, perhaps there is the invisible hand will be complemented by the visible hand of regulation. A century of this experiment has shown us that just as there are market imperfections, there's also government imperfections. And regulation is necessary, but far from sufficient. Instead, education is a much better response to our emerging aspirations. More than regulation, education. But that means educators and people who have tenure and who have the background and the community of scholarship, we need to work harder. This is existential, serious, tremendous opportunity, whether you look at AI or whether you look at climate or whether you look at inclusion. Any of these aspirations that we have, which are absolutely incredibly inspiring, and I think there is a moral evolution going on in humanity, broadly speaking. But this requires that the research and the foundational models, methods, and measures have to now catch up. And that's why.
Amazing. You didn't tell me that last night, but I'm so glad you did, because our mission at Sorenson Impact is to educate the next generation of impact leaders. And this is exactly what we're trying to do. Merci, c'était très bien de prendre un peu de temps. Et good luck on your trip back, and hope to see you soon.